Somehow the West Virginia Mountaineers just pulled off one of the biggest upsets in the last 7 years that I can remember, because Neil Brown couldn't even pull off anything close to this. What's up, guys? My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host. Thank you guys for joining in on an episode. I really appreciate it as we dive into a West Virginia win. I got to be honest, man. I was not expecting to see that. And I'm excited about it to be, listen, when it comes to Rich Rod and Company, you never know what you're going to get. And typically, Rich Rod's teams have improved over the course of time. And in this case, that definitely happened. It's been a slow progression, but here we are. We're finally there. Scotty Fox Jr. obviously had an efficient day, 13 to 22. I thought he threw more passes than that. It certainly felt like it, but they were timely completions and big time moments, and a lot of that work was done in the first half. Obviously, a lot of the ground game looked incredible. I don't know how uh, we made it here, but we did. It looks like a couple key contributors on the O line, major factor, right? As far as who we have starting on the offensive line now, that has definitely helped things. And then you look at the stats. You would think we scored. I mean, for the total, it's insane. The yards, we had 403 yards total, which is only three more yards than them. They outgained us, passing by quite a bit, but our rushing total was really where we won this game. And it feels like that a lot of the work was done through the air in some cases, but it was just spread out between a bunch of different guys. Dior Hubbard, Sincere Bowers, Scotty Fox Jr., Clay Ash even got in there. And then you had timely catches by Jeff Weimer, Rodney Gallagher, Cam Vaughn, et cetera. And then obviously the defense. Fred Perry probably had it, in my opinion, his best game ever as a Mountaineer today. We'll certainly have to see um, if he can continue that. I think he's one of those dudes you take the good with the bad when it comes to Fred Perry. And in this situation, Fred Perry absolutely killing it. So I love that with him. I think he definitely with 12 tackles, looks like one sack. The only thing he didn't do was score. Jason Chambers had a big day, 55 or with five tackles, no assist on that. That's kind of weird. Jamoy Robinson actually showed up today and played well. I was really, really happy to see that. I think he's a guy that, going forward, we can certainly count on to be that kind of driving force, hopefully. But for the most part, this was a full team win. You had turnovers, you had a little bit of ball control. I think we ran a ton of plays. If you look at first downs, we only got to 20, which Rich Rod usually preaches get to 25, you're going to win the game. Well, in this situation, you didn't need 25, you just needed 20. Third down was 5 of 17. You were 4 for 4 on fourth down. That's probably what won you the game there. Um, Pretty wild to go 4 for 4 on fourth down as much as we've struggled. The commentator said we went from a team that couldn't get a first down on fourth down or any down last week to moving the pile this week. It's pretty shocking stuff. I will say, whenever you look at, you know, some of the guys we had in there, obviously the big one that's missing in the lineup today was Makaniole. It seemed like he has been replaced at least for now. And they had Young Bear in there obviously still, and it's crazy how one offensive lineman added to the lineup can help things, and that's Donovan Haslam. He's been added to the lineup, and for whatever reason, has made just an insane pop on the lineup. It's pretty crazy. So, he's a guy that I considered to be a pretty big pickup when he got him. I think it was out of Austin P. We knew coming out he could really run block. Pass blocking seemed to be something he needed to work on, and today he was good in both. I'll be really interested to see what his overall numbers look like on PFF, because this is definitely a squad that just moved the pile today. I mean, it was over and over and over again, moving the pile. So If you see over here, we'll look at some of the stats. Um, Player stats, like I said, Scotty Fox not really a big day. Although it was obviously he's the guy going forward, especially if you consider his overall rushing performance with 2 touchdowns. That was awesome. That fourth down play was a huge play. Obviously, Connor Wigman, I guess is how they say it. He had 4 touchdowns in this game, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like we really banged him up today and got to him a lot, had him uncomfortable. This is just one of those, I think the way I look at it is empty calories. That's what this is. They were getting empty calories, man. They were able to move the ball, between the 20s, and a lot of times they scored, but when it mattered, they didn't. And that's what matters. I mean, a lot of those yards really don't matter as long as you're holding them out of the end zone. Although if you'd have told me coming into this game we were going to give up 35, I would have said we're cooked. There's no way, right? But this team scores 45 points today. There's just no way this team was supposed to score 45 points. They did. I don't know how. I don't know why, but they did. I'm proud of them. I think this was a much needed win. This is absolutely a program defining win for Rich Rod. I said it in the open. You could argue this was a bigger win than Neil Brown had in his 7 years or 6 years because it's a road win against a ranked team. I think Neil Brown was 3-22 in those similar situations. And in a lot of those teams turned out to be bad, like Virginia Tech. I mean, I know it's probably not fair to still compare those two. It's year one. That's all you got to compare it to. I do think that Rich Rodriguez coached his best game today, but a lot of that had to do with the players just making plays. We finally had somebody adequate at the quarterback spot today that at least had some sense of where to go with the football. We even saw Scotty Fox going through read progressions today and looking from one place to another to another. That's important, I think, when you look at it, because he's a guy that 100% for sure will impact the future of the program in a big way. Because if he plays this well down the stretch, does that mean you don't go get a quarterback in the portal? Do you still go get one to compete with him? Those are big questions, and I think he's answering those in real time. He certainly has a long way to go in some areas. There's a couple balls that just if he could just get it right on a couple of these deep balls, they're long touchdowns. We saw Cam Vaughn was missed on a couple today. We're not asking somebody to be perfect, but he was 13-22. If he hits a cut, just maybe 2 more of those where they were pretty open, you're talking about a guy that maybe has 250 and more like 2 or 3 touchdowns with the 2 right. And now you're talking about like a 5 touchdown performance. But I mean, for a freshman, what he did today on the road, a massive performance from him. So I'm absolutely thrilled with what we got. But just thinking about what it can be a lot better. But I mean, and that's the questions you have to ask if you're this coaching staff. Is this something that is going to get better? I think it will, but I don't know how fast. That's going to be an interesting one because he is going to come up against some defenses that, I mean, by the numbers, this was probably one of the best defenses we faced this year. But I'll be honest, outside of the one defensive lineman who they mentioned a couple times that was in our backfield, I didn't see a lot of guys that I was too scared of on their defense today. They had a corner that played well at times. There have been other games this year where I felt like, you go look at like the Utah game. It seemed like they had 4 or 5 dudes over there that was like, man, I don't know if we can deal with him today, or like even Pitt with Kyle Lewis. He was clearly somebody we needed to stay away from. I didn't sense that with Houston today. Now we have to consider they unfortunately lost somebody that was near and dear to them this week. They're coming off an emotional win over Arizona State. Those are factors when you're playing and you're young. It makes a difference. So I certainly think that this is going to be a better Houston team going forward, and I can't imagine what some of those players are going through. I mean, this guy a year ago was coaching on your sidelines, and now 8 months later he's gone. It's got to be really hard to deal with. Now, a lot of these guys probably didn't even know him, but it's still they probably maybe gotten to know him. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs, but because I know he's been sick a while. But certainly condolences to them. But this was a game I think we all needed as a fan base to get reignited over the football team. If you look at some of the analytics, there's no doubt it's 100% the case that my light just died. That people have been choosing West Virginia basketball over West Virginia football so far this year. That's just the truth. You know, the analytics say people were more interested in basketball, and I understand why that is. It makes sense. It's just sad, right? I mean, could you imagine with 5, 6 games left to go in any West Virginia Mountaineer season that there would be people wondering what was going on with basketball instead? Like, that's a pretty sad place for the program to be in. So I'm glad that this win should bring the attention back to football, because the question now becomes, can this team win out? That's a question that I think a lot of us really want to know the answer to. I do. We'll talk about it next. All right, we're back. I don't have any good ad reads to put up. So, all right, let's go to the rest of the schedule here and look at West Virginia's potential to roll out of here. So, all right, so let me see. West Virginia football. All right, so remaining on the schedule are a couple teams that do they scare you? Not as much as they did a week ago. I mean, Arizona State's still a team you don't want to play on the road, but neither was Houston. Are we? If you're asking me, this team that we saw today, the team we were today, probably not as good as what we were, and not as bad as what we have been. We're probably somewhere in the middle. But we could, man, if we could make it to 6-6, wouldn't that be just? Rich Rodriguez would have to be considered, and maybe this is I don't know. You guys tell me, but is this controversial? Rich Rodriguez should be considered for Coach of the Year if West Virginia finishes 6-6. Obviously, that would take a huge win over Texas Tech, who was just way better. But if West Virginia can somehow win out, should Rich Rodriguez be considered Coach of the Year? I think that's an interesting topic discussion. I'll say this. Yeah, I would say yes, considered. I don't think he should win it, depending on what everybody else does. But I mean, there are a few. I mean, Joe McGuire, what he's doing right now, obviously, what some other coaches in the league are doing right now, sure. But being that they mentioned it on today's telecast, let's not get it twisted. Dior Hubbard was also the 4th or 5th running back. He was not 3rd coming into the year. He didn't get, when everybody was on the roster, it was Jaheim White. It would have been Jalen Knighton ahead of him too, but he didn't even come and play. But it was obviously Dior Hubbard, Jalen Knighton, Ty Edwards, Sincere Bowers. Then maybe you get to Dior Hubbard, but then maybe you don't. It depends on who else would have been healthy at the time. Even Jackledge got carries before Hubbard, I think. Maybe one. I'm not sure. But so my question is, like, was he really he wasn't the 3rd string guy? No, this is 5th string quarterback. This is 5th string running back. That's what this is. This is top 8 offensive linemen gone and missing on a couple guys, right? And I've said it multiple times. I think we missed on McAneely. I don't like to talk about that, but it's true. Tyke Cropper played much better today. But I mean, he hasn't been up to par to what he was hopefully supposed to be. Obviously, I think Livingston and Cray you can build around going forward. I've said that all along. And then on the at the left guard spot, it looks like you may found a guy. We'll see what happens going forward. Certainly, you can't throw all your eggs in that same basket, but I do think that this is going to be something that they're going to be able to experiment. And you saw today, we still have issues, right? A lot of our runs came on the perimeter. It was a lot like Neil Brown in 2019. A lot of our runs were coming around the end with Ollie Jennings or Winston Wright Jr. Like everything was coming around the edge. And maybe I'm going back. Maybe Ollie Jennings was before. I don't remember what years were what, but you know what I'm trying to say. They were using those guys, and we really weren't able to go up the middle for another year or two. I think it was 2 years before we could really go up the middle during that offensive line build. They really started young there too. But that was a little more traditional. We brought in a bunch of young guys, and Zach Frazier, and then we went and got Doug Nestor, who had multiple years left, and obviously Tomas Rimac was started as a redshirt sophomore. I think maybe he started as a freshman too, and I'll go on and on and on, and then obviously Wyatt Milam and the whole thing. So this is a little bit different version of that. Obviously, you've got two guys in Livingston and Cray that are really young that you're growing up with. Well, Livingston's a junior now, but he's new in his career as a starter. And then you've got Cray, who is also young and new in his career as a starter. So it makes sense that they would get better over the course of a season. But I feel like the sum of the parts around them hasn't been good enough for them to be good with. So, you make one change, which will – I mean, we ran out the same five guys week after week after week and never got anything different for weeks. And finally they rotated guys in. But as far as starters go, I think this is the first time I've seen Haslam in the starting lineup. Now, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at all the plays. Maybe they rotated other guys in and out that I'm not aware of and all that. But it certainly seems like we did some things here that, for all intents and purposes, look like a better offensive line unit than we've had thus far. So let's see what happens going forward. But certainly you feel good about next week at Colorado at home, which is a game that I think a lot of us are looking forward to now. And you feel like Arizona State's winnable. I wouldn't put my money on that game just yet. But certainly you look at this and you feel like you're playing as well as Colorado at this point, if not a little better, depending on what Colorado does today. Hey, Samuel. And as far as Arizona State goes, I don't know. See what they look like today, because I don't think they're as bad as losing to Houston either. I mean, it's not like Houston's chopped liver. They were 7-1 coming in today. And then, it would be really exciting if we're going into that last game against Texas Tech and we got a shot to be bowl eligible. That would be pretty damn cool. I would be really excited about that. Is that going to happen? I don't know, but I think it's possible, which would be wild to think that this team could even possibly finish 6-6 is, I mean, I almost want to laugh, because it's like 2 weeks ago it was seemed impossible. Now it seems like maybe there's enough here. I don't know. It depends on, obviously, we look like we got some guys nicked up today. I was so scared because we had running backs. What was it? Clay Ash and, Dior Hubbard both looking nicked up at times today. Livingston looks nicked up at times. It's a scary thing, man. I don't like it, but because we're so thin at so many spots, it's like we almost can't make any mistakes, unfortunately, which is not a very big surprise when it really comes down to it. But I do think, man, I like what this team did today. And this is a squad that I have a lot more faith in. So that's just my thing. I have a lot more faith in the guys that are playing now than I have had. So that's good. Rodney Gallagher looked pretty good today. I want to point out, that I was once again wrong about him, although he went away for a few weeks. It wasn't his fault. I mean, he was playing really well at the beginning of the year with Nico, and then just things went to hell. So I want to say once again, Rodney Gallagher absolutely has gotten better. I was wrong about him. I thought I was right. I was not. Um, I can't say that any with any more fervor. He really has turned into a good slot receiver that can be dangerous going forward for this team. 5 catches, 53 yards today. That's a great performance. We'll take that every single week. He's capable of doing that every week now, I think. And I love to see Jeff Weimer here. 3 catches for 67 yards. I went on record before the season and said he's one of the greatest route runners I've seen on tape in a long time, and I meant that. I just think that the inconsistency at our quarterback spot hasn't allowed any of these guys to flourish that could flourish otherwise. And I felt coming into the year we had a good receiving room, and I still do. Unfortunately, we lost a couple guys that really made this receiving room great. If you consider, obviously, Jaden Bray and company, right? So, yes, we're diminished, but we're not totally beaten. And the buy-in from this team is pretty impressive. I have to say, it's very impressive. So let's give a big thumbs up to the Rich Rod. Let's give a big thumbs up to just everybody involved, because this has not been an easy process for them. And I can't imagine trying to stay bought in when you're just getting your ass handed to you week after week. I would not, I wouldn't want to be in that position as a coach, and certainly not otherwise. And here's the other thing that I think we're probably not thinking about. At least I don't think a lot of people are. For the future of the program as well. Obviously, money's been on everybody's mind here a lot lately. I think you just have to consider for the future of the program. Rich Rod winning out or coming close would help with the donor support as well, right? And the fan support, because you're going to need, in order to get to that $10 million outside the cap number, or 13 or what have you, we're going to have to get some support for Rich Rod to get there, I think. I've heard contrasting things on this. I've heard people that think we're going to be just fine there, and then other people say we have work to do. So I have not asked anybody that would know, because it's just not something I would ask them. We don't have those kind of talks. So, but I could. It would be out of my, I just, that would be something that I probably shouldn't do, right? So, but at the end of the day, man, I am all okay. I'm doing fine. I know a lot of people have reached out to me. Listen, not a lot to talk about right now. I would like to say more, but everything's gonna be fine. And I think sometimes in life, adversity comes your way for one reason or another, and you deal with it. It's all about how you handle it. And I am the kind of person that I've come, just in life, I've come from the depths of hell, literally. Like, I've come from the depths of hell. So there's nothing that can be thrown at me that I can't handle in life. So um, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, it's fine. You don't need to. I shouldn't even address even this much, but I think a lot of people love to hate people. It's what they do, and they think they have some kind of control, but they don't. They don't. And you know, sometimes things happen, and you realize you're lucky. You realize how lucky you are, right? So I appreciate all the support. I've gotten so many people reach out. Hundreds of people have either messaged or called. It's been too overwhelming to uh, even respond to. So I do appreciate it. I'm doing fine. So are the Mountaineers. I just got to say, how about them Mountaineers? Like, what a win today. We all needed it. The team needed it. I mean, can you imagine that plane ride back from Houston today? So big ups to the Mountaineers, man. They deserve it. I can't thank them enough for just giving us this weekend to be happy. It's been such a brutal stretch. And I got to tell you guys, I have so much faith that if Rich Rod gets the right players around him, we're going to be really hard to deal with. I think a lot of people have doubted that, but just let today be a small reminder that Rich Rod can still coach and he hasn't forgotten how. And it's not something that comes and goes. It's just circumstantially, even though people will say no excuses. Well, sometimes there are excuses. If I'm in a boxing match and my left arm is chopped off and I lose, yeah, I still lost the boxing match, but my left arm was gone. But no excuses. It's like this guy's down to a fifth quarterback that's a true freshman. He's down to his fourth or his fifth running back. He openly admits he missed on a couple guys in the portal. It happens. And even a couple of those guys came on and performed today. So I think this is a learning process for him. At Jack State, the type of or evaluation that you had to do is just different than the one you have to do at the Power Four level. And I think they're finding that out in real time as well, as far as, you can go find a Cam Vaughn who's never played who's never played receiver that played quarterback and things like that. And you can kind of take chances on guys that are great athletes at other positions and try to move them around and different things at that level. And, you know, at this level, you just kind of have to hit on guys. You know, rarely do you see a guy switch positions, right? I mean, it happens for sure, but usually a guy is what he is, and you just make him better at it or not. So, I think evaluation is going to if this thing fails, in my opinion, and then we'll go here in a minute, but if this thing fails with Rich Rodriguez, in my opinion, it's going to be because of a couple things. Either the support didn't come financially, because nobody can support without money these days, at least a baseline amount of to be competitive. Or it's going to be because they missed evaluations and they didn't never grow and learn in that area, right? And I'm not talking about high school. I'm talking about portal guys. It's a way different thing, right? In the portal, it's speed dating, like they say. So you don't get to know the character of a guy. You don't know, you can base it off previous coaches and stuff, but in a lot of cases, they may have good relationship with those guys, and those guys aren't going to trash their player, So it's like you may get a nice version of who they really are, or maybe a coach does trash them, But I would imagine if I was a coach and I had a player that I liked that maybe didn't work out, I'm going to try to help him out to get the next spot, right? And I'm going to be like, hey, man, he worked hard and it just didn't work out here or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading that. Maybe there's a level of honesty that all coaches have, like, dude, he sucks, whatever. But I think, that's the part of it that's trickier than any other part of it. That's it. That's the part that I would not want to have to do. And the ones that are doing it best are identifying. It's like the Bill Belichick teams early on whenever he was with the Patriots. They had it set to the point because they had the quarterback for 20 years and they had, certain coaching positions that stayed the same for so long. And whether it was, Charlie Weiss in the beginning or Matt Patricia or whoever, they had continuity. And so those guys knew what pieces plugged into their scheme. And they just went out and they found that same prototype every single time. It didn't really change much. It fluctuates. Maybe this guy's a little bigger, a little smaller, but they do these things that position needs well. So that's kind of the spot you have to get to here is, okay, at the offensive line, do you have guys that can gap block, or do you have guys that can zone block? What kind do you need? Do you need guys that can pass pro? Well, the blind side of the quarterback on, just whatever it is you need to be able to evaluate it and address it. And I don't know that this portal class does make me question it a little bit, just a little bit. I'm not saying that they can't grow. I'm not saying they can't learn, but Chuck Lilly, who is the GM, you never really hear a lot about him yet. Maybe with this offseason, we'll hear more. Um, obviously Rich Rod, but everybody around him, I think they need to grow and get better at evaluating talent. That's Zach Alley as well, who I do like the linebackers he brought in, but I would like to see him get more athletic there. I liked some of the corners we brought in. I thought they did pretty good there. Some of the safeties had been hit or miss, right? Um, yeah, I'm trying to figure out what parts of this defense haven't really worked because obviously today it was another pretty bad day for them, although they did make some plays. As far as statistically, like we got chewed up a little bit in the air. But part of it's also Houston's a good team, so I'll be watching closely. I know you guys will be too, and we'll definitely check it out. But I thank you guys so much for joining in. Uh, you know, obviously we'll have a lot more on this, and excited to talk about it. But we got man, it's crazy. We're just a couple days away from basketball as well. There is so much stuff to get into and so much to talk about. It's going to be fun. We're going to do it. We're going to talk about all of it. Until then, though, guys, my name is Mountaineer Paul, and I'm out of here. Have a great rest of your evening. Have a great rest of your weekend. Know that I love you. And even if you don't love me, I love you. Out.